Home values in the Austin metro have dropped nearly 18% from their peak, erasing $85,000 in paper wealth for the average buyer who signed in 2022. Drive through any new subdivision ringing Austin, Houston, or Dallas right now, and it looks exactly like what Texas keeps promising you. Wide streets, fresh lawns, brand new homes with brick facades and two-car garages rolling out in every direction like someone unrolled a carpet over the prairie. It looks like the American dream, freshly unwrapped. But here is what they are not telling you. Today we count down the 10 Texas cities drowning in unsold new homes, where builders are cutting prices, buyers are walking away, and entire neighborhoods are sitting in silence. And number one is the city that real estate agents are still calling a sure thing. Subscribe now so you never miss the next housing warning. Drive north from Dallas on a clear afternoon, and Denton looks exactly like what Texas keeps promising you. Wide streets, new retail strips, subdivisions with brick facades, and two-car garages rolling out in every direction like someone unrolled a carpet over the prairie. The lawns are green, the signage is fresh. The move-in ready banners are still hanging. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's market data, more than 35% of every home currently for sale in Denton is brand new, straight from a builder. And every single one of those builders is cutting prices to move product. Rate buy-downs, free upgrades, closing costs covered. If you bought a resale home here in the last 3 years, you are not just competing with your neighbors anymore. You are competing with a construction company that prints incentives. The reason this is happening is straightforward. Texas permitted more new homes in 2021 and 2022 than any state in the country. Builders borrowed cheap money, broke ground on thousands of units, and the demand they planned for never fully showed up, so now they have finished homes and empty balance sheets, and they will sell below your comp to get out. A growing number of resale sellers in Denton report the same experience. They list at a fair price, they get no offers, and then they notice the builder down the street just dropped another $20,000. One seller on a community forum described it as competing in a race where the other guy has a forklift. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $360,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $330,000. That is $30,000 in paper losses, and the builder next door is not done cutting yet. If builders are selling brand new homes right next to yours for less than you paid, what does that tell you about what your home is actually worth right now? Pull off the highway into McKinney, and it reads like the platonic ideal of a Texas suburb. Everything is big, everything is new, and every block has at least one house that looks like it was built to appear in a magazine. This is the kind of place people move to because they believed in it. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's transaction data, for the fourth quarter of 2025, the builder cancellation rate in McKinney reached somewhere between 25 and 30%. That means more than 1 in 4 people who signed a contract, who chose a floor plan, picked their finishes, put down their deposit, walked away before closing. That number does not appear in the brochure. The reason those buyers left is the same reason anyone leaves. The math stopped working. When mortgage rates climbed past 7%, a $480,000 home in McKinney required a monthly payment that many buyers simply could not qualify for. The contract was signed when rates were lower. The close happened when they were not. A growing number of buyers in this market report the same story. They locked in a contract, they watched rates move against them for 6 months, and they walked away from their deposit because losing $15,000 upfront was cheaper than being underwater on a mortgage for 30 years. Those canceled contracts became available inventory. That available inventory became price pressure. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home worth $480,000 at the peak is now closer to $430,000. That is $50,000 in paper losses before you count the transaction costs, the property taxes, or the insurance bill that keeps climbing. When more than 1 in 4 buyers walked away from their contracts, what did they know that you did not? New Braunfels sits between Austin and San Antonio in a corridor that used to feel like a secret. The Guadalupe River runs cold and clear through the middle of it. The old German architecture downtown gives it a texture that newer Texas towns do not have. People came here because it felt authentic, because it felt like it had limits. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Census Bureau construction data shows that New Braunfels issued more than 5,000 single-family building permits in a single year for a market that historically absorbed just 2,000 new homes annually. They built 2.5 times more than this town has ever been able to handle. Drive through the subdivisions on the northwest edge of town, street after street of brand new homes, freshly poured driveways, and almost no signs of life. According to Zillow, prices in New Braunfels have dropped roughly 11% from the 2022 peak and have not found a floor yet. Every unsold home sitting on the market is a comparable sale, waiting to happen at whatever price the builder needs to close the deal. A growing number of buyers in this market report walking through finished subdivisions, where fewer than a third of the homes have any furniture visible through the windows. One described it as a neighborhood that got built before anyone decided to live there. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $375,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $335,000. That is $40,000 in paper losses in a market that oversupplied itself on purpose. They built 2.5 times more homes than this market has ever needed. Who exactly were they building for? Kyle and Buda used to be the places Austin people went when they finally gave up on Austin prices. Small towns, 20 miles south of the city, close enough to commute, cheap enough to breathe. The builders noticed. They moved in fast, broke ground on subdivision after subdivision and marketed these towns as the affordable backdoor into the Austin dream. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin market data, new homes in Kyle and Buda are sitting on the market for over 100 days, on average, a number that was unthinkable just 3 years ago, 100 days. That is 3.5 months of carrying costs, mortgage payments, and property taxes, while your home sits and waits for a buyer that keeps not arriving. The Austin tech labor market is a large part of why. Dell cut positions, Tesla's Austin facility scaled back hiring, Apple's campus expansion slowed. The buyers who were supposed to fill these subdivisions never came in the numbers anyone projected. A growing number of sellers in Kyle and Buda report the same sequence list: wait 60 days, cut $10,000, wait another 60 days, and then start doing the math on what they actually owe. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $360,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $310,000. That is $50,000 in paper losses in a market that sold itself on being the affordable option. If a brand new home takes over 100 days to find a single buyer, how long would it take to sell yours? Head north out of Houston for about 40 minutes, and you hit Conroe. Lake Conroe shimmers to the west. The pine trees are thick along the highway. It is the kind of place Houstonians bought into during the pandemic, because it had space, it had nature, and it had prices that still made sense in 2021. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Industry estimates tracked by builder market analysts suggest that over 4,000 newly built homes in the greater Conroe area are currently sitting unsold finished homes on platted lots in subdivisions with landscaping already in. Data needed Tier S, confirmation from Redfin or Atom before publish. To move that inventory, builders are offering free upgrades worth $30,000 to $50,000. They are buying down mortgage rates to levels that cost them real money. That is not confidence, that is desperation. The builders got caught in the same trap that caught every overbuilt market in this cycle. Construction loans funded at low rates, projects started, rates moved, demand contracted. But the concrete was already poured, so they had no choice but to finish and sell at whatever the market would give them. A growing number of buyers in this market report that the deal they were offered. The free appliances, the rate buy-down, the covered closing costs looked good on paper, but so did the neighborhood comps that kept falling at the same time. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home worth $340,000 at the peak is now closer to $310,000. That is $30,000 in paper losses in a market where the builder next door is still trying to undercut you. 4,000 finished homes sitting empty. If those all hit the resale market tomorrow, Where does that leave your property value? There is a particular kind of Texas town that runs on military money. Killeen is that town. Fort Cavazos, formerly Fort Hood, one of the largest military bases in the world, sits just outside the city limits, and for decades that base was a guarantee. Steady jobs, steady population, steady demand for housing. People bought here because the government was not going anywhere. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin data, roughly 40% of active listings in Killeen have been price cut at least once. Some have been cut 2 or 3 times and are still not moving. The military population that once anchored this market has been affected by base restructuring and shifting deployment patterns, and the investor landlords who flooded in during the pandemic boom are now trying to exit. At the same time, the builders are dumping new inventory. 3 separate forces hitting the same small market simultaneously. The mechanism here is a textbook oversaturation story. When investors buy in numbers, they push prices up. When they all try to leave at once, they crater comps. And when a builder is simultaneously offering new construction down the street at a discount, the resale seller is caught in a crossfire they never saw coming. A growing number of sellers in Killeen report listing their property, receiving 0 serious inquiries for 60 to 90 days, and then watching a nearly identical home sell 2 streets over for $15,000 to $20,000 less than their ask. The market is telling them something. Most are not ready to hear it. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $240,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $215,000. That is $25,000 in paper losses in a market that was supposed to be recession-proof because the Army never leaves. If 4 out of 10 sellers have already cut their price and still cannot find a buyer, what makes you think the market has found its floor? San Antonio has a different feel from the rest of Texas. The Riverwalk, the Alamo, the old neighborhoods that go back generations. It is a city that has always had 2 lives, the tourist surface and the working class interior. And for most of the last decade, the interior was doing fine. Affordable housing, steady job growth, a military presence almost as large as Killeen's. People pointed to San Antonio as proof that Texas could keep delivering. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow, San Antonio's median home price has fallen for 3 consecutive quarters, as of early 2026, 3 quarters in a row. The last time that happened was 2011, in the middle of the foreclosure crisis. This is not a blip. This is a trend that has not reversed. The reason is structural, not cyclical. San Antonio was always the affordable end of the Texas spectrum. When mortgage rates doubled, the buyers who stretched to get into this market, the ones who needed every dollar of affordability to qualify, were the first ones locked out. The pool of qualified buyers shrank faster here than in wealthier metros, because there was less margin to absorb the shock. And builders who had overbuilt the Northwest and Far West corridors have been running clearance sales ever since. According to Bloomberg's coverage of Texas housing in 2025, smaller regional builders who took out construction loans in 2021 at floating rates found their borrowing costs more than double before their projects were complete. Several sold finished homes below cost just to close out their loans. Those distressed sales set new comps. Those comps dragged the entire neighborhood down. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $298,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $265,000. That is $33,000 in paper losses in a city that was supposed to be the safe, steady, affordable bet. 3 consecutive quarters of falling prices. At what point does wait and see become the most expensive decision you ever made? A few years ago, Celina was being celebrated in national headlines. Fastest growing city in America, population doubling, tripling, then doubling again. New schools being built before the students arrived. Roads being paved into open fields that would become neighborhoods before the year was out. The energy was real. The momentum felt unstoppable. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin data, Celina and the surrounding Prosper corridor now carry over 10 months of housing supply. 10 months. In a healthy market, 6 months is the dividing line between buyer and seller territory. 10 months means buyers have so much choice and sellers have so little leverage that pricing a home correctly has become a daily moving target. A home listed at $520,000 in January might be worth $460,000 by the time it finds a buyer in October. The growth story was real, but it was borrowed from the future. Infrastructure was financed on the assumption that population growth would continue at pandemic-era rates. It did not. The tech and finance workers, who were supposed to relocate from California and New York, slowed their migration. Some stayed, many did not. And the subdivisions that were built to house them are still waiting. A growing number of buyers who purchased here between 2021 and 2023 report discovering at refinancing or at sale that the market value of their home has slipped well below what they still owe. They are not in foreclosure. They are in something quieter and harder to escape negative equity with no clean way out. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $520,000 at the peak is now worth closer to $460,000. That is $60,000 in paper losses in a city that national media was calling a success story just 3 years ago. They called this the fastest growing city in America. But growth stopped. The mortgages did not. So who exactly is left holding the bag? If this is hitting close to home, hit subscribe. We cover these markets every week, so you can stay ahead of what is coming. Houston does not look like a city in trouble. The skyline is still spectacular at night. The energy industry pays well, and it keeps paying. The medical center, the largest in the world, employs hundreds of thousands of people. Drive through Midtown, the Heights, the Museum District, and the city looks like it is thriving. And in those pockets, maybe it is. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Adams' foreclosure market report, foreclosure filings in the greater Houston area jumped 22% year over year in the fourth quarter of 2025. 22% in a single year. That is not a rounding error. That is a structural shift happening in the outer rings, Katy Sugarland, Pearland, the energy corridor, where the pandemic buyers stretched furthest, and where the builders went deepest. The energy corridor specifically has absorbed two separate demand shocks at once. The tech sector, that was supposed to diversify Houston's economy, pulled back. And the energy sector, always volatile, went through another round of consolidation that reduced white-collar headcount in precisely the zip codes where $350,000 townhomes were built on speculation. The buyers those homes were designed for either left, got laid off, or decided to rent instead. According to Bloomberg's reporting, several large subdivisions in the Katy and Pearland corridors now have occupancy rates below 60%, despite being fully completed. The lawns are mowed by HOA contractors. The streets are clean. The driveways are empty. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home worth $340,000 in the energy corridor suburbs is now closer to $310,000. That is $30,000 gone on paper for now. But foreclosures rising 22% in a single year have a way of making, for now, shorter than anyone wants to admit. Foreclosures up 22% in 1 year. In a city built on energy money and tech optimism, what does that say about what is happening beneath the surface? Not long ago, Austin was the answer to everything. The city tech chose when it was done with San Francisco, the place musicians and artists moved to when New York stopped being possible. The Texas city that felt like it belonged somewhere else, cooler, younger, more electric than the rest of the state. During the pandemic, it became the most talked about real estate market in the country. Prices moved in ways that seemed to defy gravity. People paid $200,000 over asking. Bidding wars lasted hours. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's market data, home values in the Austin metro have declined nearly 18% from their 2022 peak. 18%. For the average buyer who signed in 2022, that means $85,000 in paper wealth has disappeared. And this is not a city that has stopped falling. Months of supply in the Austin metro have crossed 8 months as of early 2026, the highest level among major metros in the entire country. The collapse here came from both ends at once. On the supply side, builders had been permitted, and had broken ground at historic rates throughout 2021 and 2022. On the demand side, the tech companies that drove Austin's identity, Dell Tesla's Gigafactory, Apple's new campus, Google's expansion, all pulled back on hiring at precisely the wrong moment. The buyers who were supposed to absorb that supply simply did not show up in the numbers anyone had projected. Here's the twist that no real estate agent will put in the listing description. In many Austin area subdivisions, the builder is still actively selling new homes that are newer, come with warranties, and are priced below what you paid for your resale. You are not just competing with the market. You are competing with the very company that sold you your home, now selling the same product at a discount right next door. A buyer who purchased in Round Rock in June 2022 shared their experience on a community forum. They paid $498,000. In January 2026, they listed at $419,000. After 90 days, 0 offers. The builder 2 streets over was offering a comparable floor plan at $395,000, with a 2.99% rate buydown included. There was no version of the math that worked in their favor. If you bought here in 2022, here is what happened to your money. A home that cost $475,000 at the peak is now worth around $390,000. That is $85,000 gone, not because the house got worse, not because the neighborhood failed, but because of when you signed. $85,000 gone on paper in less than 4 years. Not because of anything you did wrong, just because of when you signed. Was the American dream worth that price? From Denton to Austin, from the outer rings of Houston to the half-empty subdivisions of New Braunfels, the same pattern repeats itself in every city on this list. Too many homes built too fast for buyers who arrived in smaller numbers than anyone planned for. Mortgage rates that turned affordable monthly payments into impossible ones overnight. Insurance bills and property tax assessments that added hundreds of dollars a month to the cost of owning a home that is simultaneously losing value. The math stopped working. And in Texas, nobody wants to be the first one to say it out loud. Here is what ties all 10 of these cities together. The builders did not fail. The agents did not lie. The market simply did the one thing markets always do when they run too far too fast, it corrected. And the people who got hurt were not the builders who sold at the top, not the investors who got out in time, not the agents who collected their commission and moved on. The people who got hurt were the ones who believed the story, the ones who signed because they were told this was the moment. The ones sitting in brand new homes, in half-empty streets, watching their equity drain, waiting for a rebound that the data does not support. Texas built the dream. The numbers just forgot to show up. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or real estate advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making any investment decisions. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below.